thing, if we could open it up, I know there are a lot of people attending online. If there are any questions from the online participants, can we see those anywhere? Will they be in a chat? Who's monitoring the chat? Are there no questions online? No, okay. So I think then if we open it up to questions in person, does anyone have any questions for any of us?
Work. Thank you for your wonderful presentations. I've got a question relates to the smart contract-based payment. Do you reckon the banks, commercial banks, will still play a big role after using the smart contract payment? If you based on the peer-to-peer smart contract payment for the construction progress payment, how does the local government monitor the potential issues like money laundering and corruption without having banks in the payment process?
Thank you. It's working? Yes. Okay, thank you for the question. The idea is to try to reduce the problem of corruption and increase the transparency of the payment with this kind of system. So I think it can be a very useful approach. However, I'm not sure that now, for example, at national level, our banks are ready for that and how they are approaching this kind of possible interaction with the smart solution. So we tested a possible option and framework, and we discussed it with the client. So in this moment we have this kind of experiment, but we don't have the connection directly with the bank. So this is my experience in this moment. I don't know if other colleagues want to add some remarks.
Do any of our online presenters have any comments on integration with banks, smart contracts?
Yeah, I can comment on it. The thing is, like with help of smart contracts, the automation process can be done, but there was one challenging part is we need to identify what the stakeholders all are involved in the construction. They can be connected together, but they need to be verified before going to the transactions. Myself, Krishna Murali, I'm talking.
Can everyone see? Yes, okay. Just wanted to check that you have the same view we do. Thank you. Any other questions?
Hello. First of all, thank you for the amazing insights and presentations. My question relates to the debate between choosing either a public or a private blockchain. Considering the project-based nature of the construction industry and that every different project has its constraints and different characteristics and can vary strongly, what are your thoughts in choosing, and why do you think there's so much research going towards the Hyperledger Fabric route and towards the private blockchain route, if it is also very complicated to use this blockchain on a particular project-to-project basis? And at the end of the day, it's also very difficult to design a private blockchain for this particular use in an enterprise solution.
Do you want to take it?
Okay. Yeah, for sure. We need to consider the different actors that are involved in each kind of project and the permission and action that can be allowed in the blockchain, depending on the public or private client. In our case, we started with the public blockchain, but just because it was we tested Ethereum and Polygon, but we are now moving to a private option. So I think that the example Eduardo showed us could be more reasonable also for our purposes. I mean.
Eduardo, would you like to
Yeah,
comment as well?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, first of all, I would say that in the studies that I reviewed, it was stated that companies, first of all, prefer privacy. Here we have different construction companies. Of course, between them, they are competitive between each others. So they don't want to let the competition to know what they are exchanging, what are the materials that they are looking for in the case of the DAP, for example. So yeah, companies first of all prefer privacy, and that is something that I think nowadays private blockchain networks can deliver. And also from the study that we did, one of the important feedbacks that we had was that what helps the most is a very user-friendly interface. So I would say that all the blockchain stuff is at the back end, and it is important, and it doesn't matter if it's private or public, but for the users, for the potential users, for them, it is important to have a user-friendly interface that allow them to quickly, in this case of the DApp, for example, do exchange or whatever they want to do on the platform. Yeah.
Thank you. I did see something come up, I think, in the chat. Was that another? It was you. Right. Did you get a response? Okay. Okay, good. Does anyone else want to comment on that question? Any other responses online? Or do we have any other questions in the, yes?
Yeah, actually, I have a question for some online speakers, especially for Professor Chumel Luba. So, as you mentioned about the integration of blockchain and the digital twin, so I know that in digital twin there are some sensitive or privacy data. So, as blockchain is a transparent network, so how can we protect the sensitivity or confidentiality of this data in such transparent network? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a great question. I think typically the context for the use of some of the systems and the models is that these are typically within a defined group. So even though you have some level of transparency, the transparency is limited to those that granted access to those models and transactions. And so I think you need to figure out who needs to be part of that as you develop and implement the system. Because even in pretty much in whatever project environment, you do not have information freely available to any and everyone. There are controls. And so even though you're implementing a transparent system, it's only transparent to those that are granted access and who are permissioned to be part of that team. And so I don't think that there's any major contradiction. It's really a case of putting in place appropriate controls in the system.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? If not, then I might ask a question to everyone, actually, because I think one of the things I noticed was we have different, everyone I think either explicitly had on a slide or implicitly had some idea of a timeline. And each of your respective presentations covered different spans. I think Hallyu was primarily interested in the construction phase. Shimei, I know you in your timeline of the DNA, I think, slide, you had the integration with the digital twin, which would outlast the construction phase. And Lavinia, you also opened it up to users, students, and staff, room bookings, and so on for ongoing management. But all of these were still relatively constrained, and you had buildings that were 50 years old. I imagine you might be dealing with buildings that are even older than that. In the thinking, we might be building something now that would, some of the systems of a building, the structure of the building, we would imagine lasting very long time into the future. Other systems in the building we might imagine have to be replaced, mechanical systems and so on, much less time. So I'm just wondering, in terms of the long timeline, do you see the data strategies putting in place now and the data itself, how do you see that, say, 50 years down the line? And where do you see the barriers and challenges in maintaining that data in the long run?
This is a great question and point. I am also working on the topic of digital twin for the life cycle, for the life cycle of the buildings, and this can be connected also to the research of the colleague in Florida. So the idea is that we can follow all the life cycle of the building through in this case, for existing building, because we are working mainly on existing assets, or refurbishment, energy retrofit, refunctional adaptation for the building. And we could have addition with new part on existing buildings. And so it's possible to connect all this, a lot of part of this building and concept and users and workers with sensor for having all the information during the life cycle. And some of this data could be usefully saved on the blockchain, and we can implement smart contracts for automating a lot of process, also for tracking, for example, waste, demolition waste, and reuse, and the shared database of demolition waste, as we have seen yesterday in Jens' presentation. For sure, if we need to imagine to have all this huge amount of data saved on the blockchain, and with the technological improvement and change, we could have to adapt and to reorganize some kind of data structure, I think, in thinking in 50 years of duration of buildings. However, it's true that the automation and machine readable processes are the future for also for fighting climate change. That is one of our main challenges, because the digital transition is also related to the green transition, and we need to try to work on reducing impact, create carbon zero buildings that should last in time, and with also changing outdoor conditions. So also when we think about predictive models about the behavior of the building, we need to consider the variability, not only of the users, but also of the external condition, the performance of the thermal system. So these data that are maybe saved in one moment could have to be updated in time. And so it's a huge amount of data. For sure, it's a challenge. I don't have a clear answer to that, but I think it's a really good question, and we will need to face this challenge. I mean,
Thank you. I wouldn't expect necessarily a clear answer at this point, but any answer or answers. Any of our online participants have a different take? How do you see your respective data strategies in 50 years? Are they robust? Are there any problems? Or do they
One
not have
thing
to
we can
outlast
do,
the...
yeah, one thing we can do is we need to focus on the maintenance part also, because once we have installed the systems or sensors, it will collect the continuous data. But we need to know when it has to be maintained and when it has to be done, right? So one perspective is that when AI model or machine learning model has to be there, which has to maintain the things and automatically delete the data which is not required, so that we can save the space, and we need to whatever the required data that has to be saved, that has to be transferred to the blockchain, and remaining data which is not required, that can be solved then and there itself. That filter has to be there so that we can save a lot of time and the interpretation of this data throughout the long period of time. That's my perspective.
Thank you. Okay, thank you to all our... and now I think it's time for a coffee break.
Professor Lavida again. So please be seated. Okay.
Thank you.
So this is the end of the